Grand Touring Motorsports started as a social group of car enthusiasts, but we've expanded into all sorts of motorsports disciplines, and we want to share our stories with you. Years of racing, wrenching, and motorsports experience brings together a top-notch collection of knowledge and information through our podcast, Break Fix.
We're diving into the high-octane world of racing with a young driver who's redefining what it means to chase a dream. Meet Christian Blevins Jr., a rising star in the racing world who's been leaving traditional classrooms in the dust to focus on one thing, becoming the best behind the wheel. Instead of textbooks and lockers, Christian's education happens at SpeedU, an elite racing-focused program that's built for athletes like him, drivers who live life in the fast lane both on and off the track.
On this episode, we'll follow Christian's journey from training sessions to race day, the challenges of balancing school and sport, and what it really takes to be a champion in the making. Whether you're a racing fan, an aspiring athlete, or just someone who loves a good underdog story, strap in, because this ride is just getting started.
And joining me tonight is returning guest David Middleton, our partner from MIE Racing, who you might remember from several Break Fix episodes. So welcome back, David. And along with him, we have Christian Blevins Sr. adding the parental perspective to this conversation as well. So with that, let's welcome Christian Sr. and Jr. to Break Fix.
Hey guys, thanks for having us on. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you this evening.
In Break Fix tradition, I usually always start off by saying, there's always a superhero origin story. But tonight, we're literally at the origin of the origin story. So what I want to do is I want to pass the baton to Dave for a moment to sort of set the stage for us. Why are we talking to the Blevinses? You have a relationship with them. So tell us how you guys met and how we're getting started here.
I go up to Atlanta Motorsports Park, which is out in Dawsonville. And actually, I'd been going out there almost since that place opened. So now it's been 12, 15 years. It's been a while. Anyway, I'd been going back and forth when I was living in Europe. I'd come back to visit my in-laws and go to the track. But once we finally moved out here, and I'm within an hour from my house, like I go out there regularly. And one day I popped out there. I was actually looking for a helmet. And I go into the shop and I meet Christian Sr. and Christian Jr. And we kind of just struck up a small conversation because I hadn't been on the track in a while, and you guys were actually about to do a session.
Yeah, that's right. And Christian Jr. was much younger at the time than he is today.
We struck up a conversation. I told him I just moved back from California and I'd been in Europe. And he was like, "What do you do?" And I was like, "Well, I was kind of in industry." And then we used to keep running into each other because I would do so much karting. And at the time, his son was still very, very new to karting. And I remember he was getting a little frustrated. And I remember telling Christian Jr., I was like, "Don't worry." I said, "In a few years, you're going to be much taller than me and you're going to be much faster than me." and that's exactly what I told him. And yeah, now it's true, unfortunately, on both ends.
And he's taller than me now, too. So don't feel bad.
Yep.
Yeah, so when I met him, he was just starting out. So explain where you guys were at the time we met, because he wasn't even in junior karts yet, or had he just started? I think he might have been running L206, right?
Yeah, he was still in Cadet L206. That was maybe even start of our second season, somewhere thereabouts when we first ran into you up at AMP.
To junior, what are you racing currently? How did you make the decision to actually get into karting?
Currently, I'm racing X30 Senior. I got into karting partly from my dad, but I went to an indoor karting summer camp at a place called Andretti's. After that, my dad asked me if I wanted to do this more, and I was like, yeah. Eventually, we went to Atlanta Motorsports Park, and I did the karting class up there. A little while after that, for Christmas, I got my first kart.
The Andretti camp, was it every single day for many hours, or how did that work?
I want to say it was about a week.
Yeah, it was a week long, a Monday through Friday day camp. Drop your kid off in the morning, 8 a.m. or something like that, and then come back and pick them up at the end of the day at 4 or 5 o'clock. I forget what the exact time was. We actually kind of stumbled on it by accident. I think I had gone there one day to do a couple sessions of indoor karting and saw their advertisement for it up on the wall and thought, oh, hey, this sounds kind of cool. I wonder if our kid would be interested in this. And so when I got home that day or the next, I asked him, summer break was coming up for school. And I said, hey, would you be interested in doing this as part of your time over summer break? And he said yes. And so we signed him up for it. And little did we think that would start a long journey to where we are now.
For frame of reference, you're in elementary, middle school at this point? Like, how old were you?
Oh, yeah, he would have been in
Elementary.
elementary school.
Fourth,
Yeah, that sounds
like
about
end
right.
of fourth grade.
So like 9, 10 years old, which unfortunately in nowadays, like that's old for someone who gets into karting.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So Junior, was your dad the biggest influence in getting you into racing? Did you like racing previously, or was this program the springboard into something that you didn't really know about?
I kind of always liked cars. Got that from my dad. I really enjoyed Lightning McQueen when I was a kid.
Okay.
Well, much younger. That's kind of how I got into racing. Because after that, I was like, yeah, I really want to do this more.
All right, Dad. So if you're the influencer in this, what's your backstory in motorsport? Did you race when you were younger? Like, what's your affiliation?
I grew up going to the racetrack. My dad was a motorsports fan from early on as a kid. I can remember going to Road Atlanta in the mid to late 70s to watch anything and everything that we could get up there to watch, from, a local SCCA event all the way up to back in the days of the IMSA GPT cars. Would watch them and everything in between. That's kind of a lot of my earliest memories, going to the track and watching cars and hanging out at the racetrack. And of course, when you're 6, 7, 8-year-old boy, I can't think of anything cooler that I would have wanted to do than to go watch fast, loud cars go by. So yeah, that was kind of my intro into it. And then eventually my dad got into amateur racing and SCCA. I think I was probably around 14 or 15 at the time when he got into that. Eventually, I got into racing as well, again in SCCA. Once I kind of hung up my bicycle racing days, myself and another friend of mine that I raced bicycles with, we were, ironically enough, at Road Atlanta watching Petit Le Mans. He struck up a conversation with my dad, who was up there watching with us, about getting into SCCA and getting into racing. And the Spec Miata class had just really sort of gotten off the ground, and my dad was doing that at the time. And so we pretty much decided at that race that was something we should do. The very next February, we're at SCCA driver's school at Roebling Road. That started my time behind the wheel in racing.
So we've got some intergenerational club racers and motorsports enthusiasts here. So we got 3 generations of Blevinses happening in this span that we're talking about here. As we're talking about Christian Jr.'s story, what's interesting about this is you hear about kids that, I started in a kart at 5 years old and I worked my way up, and then dirt track racing and sprint kart. I want to go to Xfinity, and, they're working their way up through the Carolina system, and all those kinds of things. And the folks that they want to race in Formula One, and it's a very long and arduous road to get there. But you guys are on this path right now. You started in karting in the Georgia area and you're building up, but you had to make a decision at some point. We're going to focus on it full time. And so to Christian Sr., what was that moment that you said, all right, we're going to pull him out of school and we're going to go after this full bore?
That moment really happened towards the end of the school year, really sort of preceded by, at some point in that racing season, Junior made the decision himself, I guess just internally. I don't think we've ever really talked about this. At some point, the switch went from just about having fun to I want to win. And so we went from doing everything on our own, and dad turning the wrenches and the kart setup and all of that sort of stuff, to starting to work with a team, letting a pro mechanic and a coach and teammates and all that sort of stuff fell into place. We got towards the end of that racing season, realized that, number one, because of that and the amount that we were starting to travel to races and try to be on the national racing calendar in karting, that we were missing school already. As we got to the end of the school year, realized that we had missed enough days of school at that point that Junior was going to have to take, I think it was 1 or 2 of his classes. He was going to have to take the finals for those classes versus being able to exempt out of them because of how many days he had missed.
And I also couldn't miss any more.
And we still had end of the year race at Trackhouse to go. And so once we realized all that and realized, well, if this is the direction that we really want to go, then we've got to find a different avenue where we're not going to have to be concerned about, did I miss too many days of school? Am I going to get in some sort of trouble or possibly get held back a grade or, whatever the end result might have been. So at that point, we really just kind of by accident stumbled upon a Facebook post that came across my wife's feed that somebody had posted in the karting group up at Atlanta Motorsports Park. Hey, this school down in Griffin called Skipstone Academy was starting this online school for kids who raced. So we knew Skipstone Academy already, at least by name, private Christian school. Their football team played the football team at our former school, also a private Christian school. So we know this school already. Seems like, a good reputable school. If they're putting their resources into doing this, then high likelihood it's going to be a quality product. My wife and I talked about it and talked with Junior about it and decided, hey, let's sign up for it. So we did that part. Then we had to go meet the people at the school, do a little interview with the administrators at the school, talk with them about what the program entailed and whatnot, and kind of make sure this was going to be a good fit for everybody. We concluded all of that and walked away from it with, okay, this is a really good fit. Let's move forward with it.
That's interesting.
It is. And so let's unpack that for just a second. So to Junior, your dad mentioned you guys didn't really discuss that moment. He says you made the decision that you wanted to take on this full time. What was it for you that just snapped, that changed, that light switch that went off? What was that moment that you said, okay, Dad, I want to do this for real. Like, let's figure out a way to get this done.
There wasn't really any particular moment that I can point out that was like, I want to do this even more and I want to win. It was always, I really like this. And then gradually it was, I want to start doing this more. And then one day it was just, I want to try and win all of this stuff.
Were you seeing things even on social media or like professional races, something like that was drawing you in further into this world? Like, hey, I want to be like so-and-so. Is there somebody that you're looking up to in the professional motorsports world that maybe you're modeling yourself after?
Or someone you competed against in karting?
One of the things in the car world was Wayne Taylor Racing. I've always really liked the cars that they run, and I've always wanted to drive one of their entries to whatever racing series that they'll be competing in. That's probably the main one for my inspirations.
All right, so we got our eyes set on IMSA, so we're going to unpack this as we go along.
That's right. How was the transition of having your dad work with you and prepare the karts and everything to going into a team? How was that first year? How did you deal with giving feedback? Because a lot of the younger generation, giving feedback to the engineers is always an interesting thing. Kids, of course, are different across the board, but we find that there's a certain generation that just, they want the car prepared. They don't really want to give feedback to the engineer. And then when things aren't working, they don't always know how to be eloquent and articulate what's going on. You transitioning from dad doing everything and you doing everything with dad and having grease to you just kind of basically sitting back and being the pro. You're paying for the service. How did you deal with that? How did you deal with feedback when you weren't happy, when the cart was maybe not set up in the right way or was pushing in a certain corner? Like, how did you transition from giving feedback to dad to giving feedback to somebody who's running a team?
With dad, it was always like, hey, dad, cart isn't turning or something like that. When we moved over for that first initial while, I never really had much to complain about because the mechanic who we have has been doing it for a really, really long time. Like he mechanicked for Logan Sargent when he was still in karts. So he knew what he was doing. And at the time, I never really had much of a complaint to say. But after a while, I've been able to give feedback like, I want more front grip or the front has too much grip. Let's give it a little less. Mm-hmm. Really just small stuff.
Of course, the more you're in the kart, the more experience you have. Did it become a challenge of like, man, these guys know so much. This guy was a mechanic for a guy who went into Formula One and did Formula Two. Were you able to assert yourself or did you feel like, man, if I say something, maybe I'm saying something wrong and the guy's going to be like, hey, that's ridiculous. The kart's not doing that.
It was really just I never had much to say because if I'm being honest, the kart felt better than it ever had been.
That's pointing more fingers at dad.
Yeah, the difference between dad mechanic and pro. And I would say too, one thing that I've noticed over especially this past year, to your point, comes with experience in seat time as he's developed as a driver and he's pushing the car harder. He's giving more feedback now than I think he did in the first 2 years that we were with this whole team combined. This year, I think he's given more feedback. And I think he's developed enough as a driver to know what the kart's doing and then come back in after a session on track and be able to communicate that to the mechanic to say, hey, when I do this, the kart's doing this. And then, either that's good or that's bad, or can we change it to have more or less of whatever he's looking for at that particular time?
Just to clarify for those listening at home, this is still sprint racing, right? We're talking 20, 30-minute sessions. We're not talking endurance karting, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, getting back to the education side and drawing that line, one thing about motorsports is you do reach a point where if your kid is good enough, school becomes an issue, right? It's not like he's playing travel baseball or travel basketball where you're doing it after school on the weekends. Like, yeah, we're gone on the weekends. We're gone maybe sometimes like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday because we got to travel or even Monday.
Mm-hmm.
That begins to take, I think, a toll on the family. And how did having a child who does motorsports, how did you guys balance that as a family? If you could just talk also more about how SpeedU and Skipstone was able to give you guys a sense of community and education, because I'm sure that was important to you and your wife, right? You didn't want him just to be 100% driver and then down the line, like, got nothing out of his education.
Absolutely. So yes, education is obviously very important. And, we place a big emphasis on that. A's and B's keep you in the seat of the kart. C's, we got to have a little conversation, which we've never had to have. And we've never even approached, what happens if you have a D. So as parents, we've been extremely fortunate in that regard that he's always done well in school, number one. And then I think secondly, as parents, we did have some concern with going to SpeedU in this online education environment where the onus is on junior to make sure that he is completing the required amount of work per class per week, as well as if there's something that he doesn't understand or is struggling with, to speak up and say, hey, I need to get some additional help on this or something like that. So those were definitely some concerns coming from a traditional school type setting with kids in a classroom in a physical building and a teacher that's right there in the room with you, and all of those things that we don't have now. So far, it's worked out extremely well. He's also this school year started dual enrollment, so he's taken his college English class, while he's in school. It is definitely a balancing act for sure with the travel involved now with what we're doing. Going in the second year that we're doing this amount of travel now, I like to think that we have it a little smoother than we did the first year, but I don't really know that that's the case. That's maybe just an illusion I'm telling myself, because there are definitely some challenges with it. To your point, with these national level races, oftentimes we're leaving on a Wednesday and then we're not back home until sometime late Sunday night. For junior with his schoolwork, one of the great things about the SpeedU program is that he can either know that, hey, I've got this event coming up, so I need to work ahead so that when I'm out for a few days doing this, I don't have a whole bunch of makeup work to do on my return. Or, all right, hey, I've still got these X amount of things I need to get done once we're back from the event, knowing that, all right, these next couple of days, I've got to put in some extra time to get caught back up in these, whatever classes where, maybe he didn't get all the work completed before we left. And then you wrap all of that up with mom and dad still have full-time jobs, trying to balance that out with travel and taking time off of work and trying to juggle that. My wife and I both travel for work. My wife travels extensively for her work. There's a lot of times where she's not able to make it to these big national level events. She's somewhere else in the country or somewhere else in the world sometimes and just can't get back in time for when we leave, it just doesn't make sense. She's maybe not back until sometime Friday night before she could even consider coming to the race. So it's definitely a struggle in that aspect.
Has that been the biggest challenge that you have faced, having your son pursuing this?
Probably so, now that you say that. The school piece now through SpeedU is actually, that's kind of easy. But, it's not so easy for myself or my wife to just go, oh, well, we'll just work ahead because we've got to be out of the office these next few days, right? We, as adults, we all know it, doesn't necessarily work that way. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge that we face with all of the traveling is sort of, okay, who's going to this event? Can we both go to this event? What happens at home while one or both of us are gone to whatever the event may be? And, trying to figure all of that out. I would say last year, which was the first year that we really hit the national schedule hard, that was probably one of the biggest pieces to kind of try to figure out how do we manage all of that. If I'm being honest, I'm not sure that we still have that completely figured out.
How many other kids that Junior is racing with or against are in similar programs? Is there a large amount of the folks on the national stage and national karting that are doing the same sort of thing? Are you guys part of the norm, or are you still part of the exception?
My sense is from the few parents that I've spoken to, especially ones that know what we're doing, but they're not doing it. I think we are a little bit of the exception. Of course, the primary one is their kid is still in traditional school and they're missing school and taking time off and all of that stuff. The next group of kids are kids that are in some sort of homeschool type program, whatever that looks like. They're still dealing with if my kid needs help in a particular subject that they're not doing good in or something like that. They're trying to figure all that out on their own as a homeschool parent, or, where do they go to get whatever resource they need, or whatever homeschool curriculum that they're following is it going to meet all the accreditation standards and whatnot so that when their kid goes to apply to college that they can get in. We had this unfortunately happen to a friend of ours that we know very well, that they did the homeschool thing, got to the end of it, and realized that one of the subjects that we took, I don't remember all the details on, but they either didn't do enough hours in that subject, or, there was something there that was lacking that they were going to have to go back and redo some work in that one subject area, where we don't have to worry about that with this program. So it takes a lot of worry off the plate. When we first looked into doing this program, was one of our big concerns, like, okay, this all sounds well and good, but, at the end of the day, does this get us what we need, what Junior needs to go from high school student to college world at the end of it? Or, are we going to get to the end of this and find out, oh, we don't have this, or this, or, this was just a colossal waste of time and money. So yeah, I think that's been a big advantage for us in that aspect of we don't have to try to figure all this out. Somebody's already done that.
I'm sure there's a lot of parents listening right now trying to run the numbers and figure things out. So let's unpack this a little bit more. You mentioned the curriculum, and it's part of an existing private school. The SpeedU sort of is a, let's say, subset of that. Is it completely self-taught? There's no instructor-led anything? Or is it more like the COVID times where you're working remote, there's a teacher that checks in every so many days, and then you got assignments, like, how does it work exactly?
So they do have what do they call it, Junior? A weekly check-in?
Yeah, it's a weekly check-in.
So they do a weekly check-in. I think it's on Tuesdays, where the whole class gets together, all the grade levels of the kids that are in this program. They get together with one of the administrators from the school, all on a Zoom call that usually lasts somewhere around 30 minutes. They kind of talk about what's going on, what have you been doing, what's going on in your world, what's coming up, what do you have on your radar? And then they'll intersperse that a lot with having a guest speaker will come on and talk about some topic to the kids, making sure everybody's sort of corralled and staying on task for the week and the month and whatnot. The actual classes themselves, Junior sits down in front of a laptop. How would you describe it? Like a video you watch?
Yeah, a video, and then there's some questions based on the topics that were in that video, and you answer those, and then you move on to the next lesson, which is another video, and then questions.
So computer-based training, I've got this scenario in my head of this virtual one-room schoolhouse, right? You mentioned all the kids from all the grades get together for these check-ins.
It's all grade levels, which is from elementary to high school.
Oh, wow. Are they all from the same geographical area, or are there kids from all over the United States in the SpeedU program?
Pretty much all over the US.
Okay.
There's some people in Florida, Georgia. I think there might still be California. So kind of all over.
Okay. Thinking about tuition, are you paying the normal rate to the school? Are you paying a lower rate? Is it a rider on top of the standard? Like, how does it work from a dollars and cents perspective?
Their fee is to do this particular program. So it's not like you're paying the fee to the traditional school and then paying some sort of additional fee on top of it to be in this program. You're just paying for just this program, nothing additional. Personally, we found the cost to be actually a good bit less than what we were paying at our previous private brick and mortar school. So that was a nice surprise to find out that, this was going to hit the pocketbook less.
I mean, that buys some tires and gas at the end of the year,
It
right?
does. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, that helped out a lot. I'm sure a question for the parents out there that they're thinking about. When I talk with other people whose kids aren't even in motorsports and I tell them, what my kid does and where he goes to school, I think they kind of automatically assume the curriculum is somehow different. Junior is taking the same high school classes that any other kid in high school would take, as far as, the English, the science, the math, all of that's the same. You could walk into any school and find the same subjects being taught. Where things differ a little bit, especially like with the weekly check-ins that they do, those will oftentimes have a very tilted slant towards the motorsports world, and the guest speakers that they have are typically somebody from the motorsports world. And then our field trips with the school are very different than traditional school field trips. So all of our field trips revolve around motorsports for the most part. Case in point, our first year with the program, was it October, I think it was, when we went to North Carolina? The school put together a field trip and it just happened to work out perfectly with a national level race that was at Trackhouse in Mooresville. The school did a field trip up to the Mooresville and surrounding area that, home of NASCAR and whatnot. We went up the week before to do some practice at the track. Just stayed up there that whole next week because the field trip encompassed like 3 days of that week. We went around, saw various race teams and spoke with team owners and program directors and engineers and all that sort of aspect of the motorsports world that a lot of people probably don't even realize exists. And then at the end of that week, we were back at the track again, getting ready for this national level event. In between all of that, Junior was able to sit in our hotel room on his laptop and get his schoolwork done. That worked out really well. And the field trips are super cool. Who did we get to meet?
Hold on, I know this. I don't know why I can't remember the name.
Sunglasses, big hat.
Richard Petty.
There you go.
Yeah.
The king.
The king.
The king.
I don't know why I couldn't remember that there.
Guys, they're lucky I haven't even got to interview him yet. Man. All right. One more piece of this, just from the parental side, right? Because you're at that age. Dad, you mentioned before, you got to start thinking about college. Has the academy, the brick and mortar school, assigned a college counselor to you guys yet? Have you been talking about what the next steps are? Or have you identified programs that will accept the SpeedU and all that kind of stuff? Are you thinking very local in the sense of like maybe something like Belmont Abbey, which has a motorsports program, stuff like that? What's the next step? And what are those conversations like now that you're in this program in its second year?
Honestly, I think we're probably a little behind getting some of those conversations going with the school, coupled with Junior, I don't think has really decided which direction he wants to go after high school as well. So we're still feeling that out, looking at options. If it was up to me, if it was up to Dad, you mentioned Belmont Abbey, which I didn't realize had a great program. I might need to talk with you some more offline. Of course, I know Clemson has a great program. Knowing my kids' passion and love for the motorsports world, I'm trying to push them to look that direction at some of these programs. One of the things that is a big sort of saying at SpeedU with the people that run that program is it's great that you want to pursue this route and try to make it in this world of motorsports as a driver, but what's your plan B? And so you got to have a plan B. And as you and David well know from your experience, there's so many avenues and so many roads in the world of motorsports, so many different things you can do and still be involved in this arena, even if you're not the guy behind the wheel.
We call that the autosphere.
The autosphere. I like it.
There's one more piece of this before we transition into some other topics that Dave wants to talk about. It's really for junior. You're not in a traditional school. Your high school experience, when you look back on it, you're going to be telling people, man, I did this thing and I was on the road with my dad and we're racing, but I didn't have the same emotional connection. You don't have the same kind of classmates. And as you said, there's varying in age. Maybe some of them you race with, some of them you only get to see at the races. And again, in this day and age, we're all connected through social media and Discord and this and that. So I'm sure you've got friends that you're connecting with, but emotionally, how is this affecting you? Like not being in a brick and mortar school, have you given it any thought?
At first, it was pretty difficult because I had a lot of friends in the school that I used to go to because I'd been there since first grade, all the way up until ninth grade. I got the idea of what high school is like since I had 1 year in it. I was able to get used to not being able to see my friends in person nearly as much, but like we still talk every now and then, and I see a lot of my friends from racing nearly every weekend.
So do you think in a way it adds a level of clarity and focus to what you're doing because you don't have all the distractions, whether it's the pubescent ones, the dramatic ones, the girlfriends, all the other stuff that sort of comes along with high school. With all that distraction out of the way, do you think it's going to make you a better driver?
I feel like it never really had an impact. I always was able to kind of just put it aside when I was racing.
Yeah, and I would say that was one thing I was going to say too, that social aspect for the parents that are out there, because that was a concern of, my wife and I's going into this program and sort of losing that connection with the kids that he knew and, that aspect of high school and that socialization and peer group and all that sort of stuff that we, in a lot of aspects, don't have. In fact, we just got an email not long ago from the actual brick and mortar school that runs this program. They have prom coming up, right? And so we really hadn't even thought about, at least I hadn't, until the email hit my inbox. Oh, prom is coming up pretty soon. What do we do? We don't know anybody at the school. The kids that are in this program are really sort of apart from the whole rest of the school. I don't know that if we walked on campus, somebody at that school would go, oh, that's Christian Jr. He's in the SpeedU program. He does. I don't think anybody there would know who we were or why we were there.
Well, the fact that he's in his racing suit, because that's the only suit he has, that
that might give it away. Yeah, that was a concern of ours going into this, but like you said, people, especially kids nowadays, are so connected with each other through this social media universe. I have my own thoughts on that, for better or worse, but we were at Trackhouse last year. I keep seeing this kid coming over to where Junior's at on grid before he's going out for his sessions on track. And I didn't think much about it at first until I keep seeing this kid over and over again. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know that kid. Who is this? Finally, I asked him, I was like, hey, who's this kid that keeps hanging around? Do you know him? Like, I had no idea. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's my friend. And I'm like, well, how did you meet him? Oh, we met on Discord. Discord? What's that? Right? And then I'm like, well, where's he from? Wisconsin? What? How do you meet somebody from Wisconsin on this thing called Discord? That's what kids do these days.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Dad, to kind of close out this thought on the parental side of things, if you could go back in time and this program was available when you were Junior's age, do you think you would have done it, knowing what you know now?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm that personality type that when I'm going at something, I'm all in. It wouldn't have mattered to me, that social aspect. Like, oh, I don't have any friends other than the people I see when I'm at the racetrack. Okay, that's fine. because I'm doing this thing right here that I'm really passionate about and I'm chasing after it. That's all that matters. Like that's my sort of mentality for better or worse. If this program had been available when I was growing up as a kid, and if we'd had the financial means, my parents to do for me what we're able to do, my wife and I, for our son, yeah, sign me up.
Well, Christian, I got news for you. All four of us sitting in this room are exactly the same.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's like we wouldn't be in this room if we were different. That's the way all four of us are, where you're going to basically put everything aside to chase your dreams and to chase what you're passionate about. I know for sure Eric and
Yeah.
I talk about this all the time. And there's just a certain set of people that we are this way. We don't care about everything else. It's like, this is a goal I set and this is what I want to do. And I don't know how much time you've been on track recently, Christian, but Eric spends a lot of time on track, and I still try to get out there. I'd like to get more. But my mom joked and she said, every time I see you on track, you seem at peace. And I say, yeah, I find peace at the racetrack. That is where I'm most at peace. I'm not thinking about my kids. I'm not thinking about parents, job, anything. I'm really focused on myself and how I could be faster and what I got to do to be faster than the next person, right?
Right.
So there's this peace that you get out there, and not everybody's built that way.
Yeah.
You're in a good group. But to you, Junior, I've got a question about SpeedU. So you're at a place called SpeedU. What do they do from an educational standpoint for your racecraft? Do they use any tools to make you faster? Do they talk about physical training to prepare for being a driver? Or what kind of things like that are you getting out of this program? Or is it strictly educational? And are they teaching any kind of engineering stuff?
It's mainly educational. SpeedU is like its own thing, and then there's another thing that is affiliated with the school.
Of the Synergy
Yeah,
Speed Lab.
Synergy Speed Lab is like their actual racing shop and team, which they do like Legends car racing, Bandoleros, late models, and things like that. Like whenever I go to one of the events like PRI, they'll be there and they'll have like some of their sims there. We'll be there representing the actual education part of it.
Do they use sim training in your curriculum? How does that work? We did see the sim, but how do they utilize that? Or do you have to go down to Skipstone and use the sim? Do they have certain days where like all of you can come down and do training in that way, whether on the sim or off the sim or anything working on your racecraft or the mental side of driving?
They don't, but from what I know, you can pretty much just go down there. Since you're with the school, they'll most likely let you do some laps on the sim.
Okay.
I haven't really gotten a chance to do that though.
They do have the Sims, which you guys saw at PRI. They take certain ones around to different events that they're going to promote the school program itself. If we wanted to drive down to the Griffin, Georgia area where they're located at to go in their shop and hop on a sim, we certainly could. But, for us where we live on the west side of Atlanta, it just kind of logistically doesn't really make a lot of sense to make that trip down there, plus finding the time to do it as well. It's something we could take more advantage of than we do, but at the same time, logistically, don't really know that does it make a lot of sense to try to fight through all that traffic to get there, spend whatever amount of time we're there doing that, and then fight our way through traffic to get back home.
So then as an alternative to that, are you doing sim at home on your own?
Yeah.
Are you strictly iRacing? Are you mixing it up? What are you using to practice and what are you practicing with?
iRacing is the main one, but I also use Assetto Corsa for when I just want to drive.
iRacing is the gold standard for most professional drivers. I don't think there's ever going to be I don't think in the next few years there's going to be a major shift, but a lot of professional drivers are also using Assetto, which is used in industry. And yeah, LMU is getting a lot of positive feedback right now that they're tweaking the game and getting it up to par.
Yeah, I've been wanting to try that and R Factor.
And if I think back when we first met years ago, I told you guys I was in the middle of developing a sim program because my program was still fairly new.
Mm-hmm.
How has sim helped your driving and what are you learning from it going forward? Because one thing I talked to your dad about, and I told him there's so much you can do in the sim, and this is why it's such a great teaching utility, whether you're going to be a driver or engineer or things like that. So how are you using the sim different from maybe when you started years ago to what you're doing now that you're more of an experienced driver?
Mainly, to me, it's still just keeping your reflexes sharp. Kind of a substitute for being in the seat, although it really isn't a full substitute. It just complements to it, if anything. But that's mainly what I've gotten out of it so far.
Do you use setup shops or are you tweaking setups at all? Have you started messing around with that?
I prefer to do fixed setup.
Okay.
The only thing that I even somewhat bother with for setup is another software called Kart Racing Pro. It isn't compatible with the PC that we use for the sim. I use it on my gaming PC, and I can still connect it to the sim. I just don't really feel like picking up my PC and going into a different room, connecting all that up, and then when I'm done, unconnecting it, moving it back, and all of that.
That makes sense. When you guys get your new hardware, I'll get you hooked into some software where you can basically start tweaking, go faster, and just play around with it, because I think that's very vital going forward. It's not exactly one-to-one, but there's so much you can do that will help to teach you more vehicle dynamics and carry it forward as you step into the next stage of your career.
Yeah, and I think, that's going to be something I'm kind of interested to see as we start to transition out of the kart and into the car, utilizing the sim, because, let's face it, the karting world, especially our proximity to AMP, even though we're not super close, we get up in the morning, we drive up there, we do what we do, and drive back home, and we're home in time for dinner.
Right.
That's real easy to do in the kart. Not so easy to do in the race car. I do see the day coming where the sim is going to start becoming a more vital aspect of what we're doing to hone those skills and keep the reflexes and practice techniques and all of those things, because we won't have the ability like we do now with the kart to go, oh, it's Saturday, let's go spend 2 hours driving around the kart track. Unless mom and dad win the lottery, that ability is going to go away. So yeah, I'm very eager to see how the sim is going to fill that gap.
Christian Senior, you brought up a really good point, the next steps. And Junior, you're right at almost legal driving age. So the question becomes, what is the next step when you step away from karting? Are you going to go do some autocross? Are you going to go straight into club racing and dust off the patina off of Dad's Miata? Like, what is that next step there?
Do you want to start that out, or should I start that out?
I guess we'll start it.
Okay.
I don't really know what we would do for cars, but I'm pretty sure it'd probably be going to club racing. I don't know if it'd be oval and like Legends cars, road course and Legends cars, or like radicals for road course. It's kind of whatever we end up feeling gives the best option.
You guys are going for a test though, right? Aren't you going for a radical test?
Yeah, yes, we are. So yeah, Junior mentioned the Legends car. So we did a test in a Legends car back last November with the help of some folks at SpeedU that knew some people in the Legends car world. We were able to set that up. So we spent a day in a Legends car. I think you had a blast. You liked it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, now we're set up to do a test day in a radical up at AMP. And I think from there, we'll kind of look at between the two and sort of look to make some sort of a decision between which path do we go down. One of those two roads, which are very different from each other. But there's going to be a lot that goes into that decision. What are we comfortable with? Also, a big part of that decision is, well, what opportunities present themselves with which one of these roads that we might pick to go down. The Legends car is, of course, in that ladder up into the NASCAR world. And one of the great things about SpeedU is that really all of the kids that are in this program, that's the direction all of them want to go. They're all in either Bandoleros or Legends cars. We're really, I think, the only people in the SpeedU program that are in karting and in the road course world full time. We kind of see where the Legends car road sort of goes, and we know people in that sort of world already, versus the radical. We don't really know anybody in that world, but it also looks like there are some exciting things happening in that world, especially up at AMP with the Primal school that's up there in the program that they're running, and some of the things they're doing with a race series that's kind of merging some of that gamer sim world and bringing that over into the car world. And so, if that's the route that we go, he may get out of the radical at the end of the day and say, Dad, I hate this thing. I kind of doubt it.
You won't. Yeah. I've been in a radical. Nope. You won't. You definitely won't.
But yeah, so that's kind of what, at the moment, the world sort of looks like for us as we transition out of the karting and into the car world. Spec Miata was also a discussion of maybe that's a path as well. Junior wasn't super excited about that.
I don't want to rely only on draft.
course, I love Spec Miata. It's what I did. It's a great class for a lot of different reasons.
It is, yeah.
But the last few races that I did in Spec Miata, I looked around and started to realize unless something changes, these are all cars that were at best 15 years old or older. It's a spec class. And so if you need a new wiring harness for your injectors, where do you get that from? The junkyard. What's going to happen there in another 5 years? And so that gave me a little pause about going down that particular pathway for as good as it is. I think there are going to be some things that need to change with that category because those cars aren't getting any younger. Parts are becoming increasingly harder to find for these cars if they're not going to make some provision for, okay, we realize some of these parts that fail on these cars because they came from a street car and now we're asking them to live in a race car environment, but there aren't any new parts of these parts. Something's going to have to give at some point. I really do worry about what's going to happen with that class ultimately. So yeah, we talked about Spec Miata. Maybe that's something we still dabble in at some point, but I don't really know.
You alluded to something earlier. As you move up, things get more expensive. That's the punchline of motorsport.
Right?
Pay to play. So that said, depending on the path you choose, every one of them has some sort of financial burden. And it takes us into a conversation about what we talk a lot about with pro drivers, which is the business side of racing. And it seems to be the consensus among drivers. One of the things they hate the most is begging for money from sponsors and then the sponsorship commitments and, got to go here and public speaking and show the car, all these obligations. Suddenly they become part of this media machine and there's less focus on them winning so much as being a commodity to the businesses that they're representing.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a parent, how are you setting the stage for sponsorships? Have you started to reach out? How are you building a business plan for your son as he is now starting to choose where he's going to go once he's graduated away, not only from SpeedU, but from karting itself?
Yeah, so a project that he has that is not completed yet, I will point out, Junior, I wanted him to work on, my initial thought was just kind of a simple one-page flyer that he could go around to businesses with or hand out to people. Kind of, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing in exchange for these different levels of sponsorship. Here's what you're going to get back out of this, which I think is super important. Drivers hate going and looking for sponsors, but I think maybe the next thing they hate probably the most or hate even more is then the obligations that come after that and standing in front of a room of people to talk about what it's like to be a race car driver or show up somewhere with your car or whatever that looks like. But I think in this day and age where there's so many different things that are vying for businesses' attention and dollars, at least in the world of motorsports, it's no longer about what happens on Sunday between the green flag and the checker flag. Yes, that still ultimately does play a part, but I think the bigger thing now is what happens from after the checker flag on Sunday until the next green flag on Friday or Saturday. Because if you can't show yourself as an individual and a driver to be somebody to that business owner that you're asking to hand over money, if you can't show them that you've got a good head on your shoulders, you're not going to go out and do some boneheaded thing that's going to ultimately reflect back on that business owner's business, they're quickly not going to care about what you did on Sunday.
Right.
And they're going to go find somebody else. And that's a big topic of discussion in the program at SpeedU that they really harp on with all the students there is, yes, we want you to be whatever level you can be as a driver and hope you succeed in this world and all of those things. But we want you to be a quality, upstanding person. That's number one. You see this at the track, even the karting world. For better or worse, I can look at how somebody's kid acts at the kart track. I can be pretty assured. I can tell you what their upbringing's like. The parents' reflection comes out in that environment, maybe unlike any other. There's all this emotion at the race. Your adrenaline's pumping and you're going after it, and somebody sends you off in a corner. Watch what that kid does after that. And that will tell you a whole lot about that kid's parents and how they're raising that kid.
I thought you were going to tell me there's the equivalent to dance moms and karting. There's like cart dads, right?
There's
No,
cart parents.
there are cart parents. I think dance moms are probably worse, but
Oh,
You know, you guys are really taking a non-traditional path in the world of sports, whether it's motorsport or sports in general, right? Like this is a really interesting paradigm that you guys have going on here. The speed bumps in the road aren't clearly visible yet, and there's challenges to be overcome. If I pull any lesson back from the pros, sponsorship is it. Coming up with the funding to race as your job, because remember, you're going to become a professional driver. That is your career. What you do for a living is drive cars.
Right.
So again, to the point of earlier, what's your plan B, if it doesn't work out? And I don't want to cast any shadows or clouds on things, but it's a really serious discussion that I think a lot of people get excited about the wins and the trophies, and we're moving forward. And then you get to this point where you're like, money don't grow on trees. There's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of compromise in there. And so my best advice in this case is finish that project your dad set out for you there, Junior, and come up with a business plan, come up with an executive summary, come up with a way to sell yourself as an asset to these businesses, whatever they are. And the one thing I've heard from a lot of folks is they were afraid to knock on the door of that company because they were like, well, why would they be interested in racing? Why would they be interested in sponsoring me? And if the lesson there was the worst they can say is no, but if you don't ask, you'll never know. So that's also important, is just try different things and see who can rally behind you, because you don't know where it's going to take you next. There's a lot of things to think about there, and we could probably talk on sponsorship for a whole nother episode, but I do want to move on a little bit here as we sort of wrap out this episode. Dad, if you could give a piece of advice to other parents, knowing what you know now, and going back to my point about not knowing all the speed bumps that are yet to come, what would you say to another parent that was in your shoes a couple years back looking at this going, is this the right thing for my son or daughter?
I'm just going to throw this in too. Eric and I have girls who really love motorsports and they're really young. And we're always like, I really want my daughters to get into motorsports. And they know what we both do. But there's also the hesitation of like, we know what's going to happen if they start going down this path. I know enough people in the industry. I can make phone calls. I could say, hey, if my girls get good enough, I can make phone calls. I could do this. But at the end of the day, sometimes there's this hesitation because I'm like, man, that is a sacrifice. It's such a sacrifice to get your kid to that next level. So, you're not just talking to the main audience. You're kind of talking to us too, who have kids who aren't that age who like motorsport.
Yeah, yeah, I forgot about that. The main things I would say, looking back from where we started to where we are now, take small steps in the beginning, because you ultimately don't know until you get to a certain point, kind of where we're at. Is this something they're really going to stick with? Right? We've all seen, you could pick the sport, even. It's not just motorsports, but you could pick the sport where you see the parent with the kid that has all the latest, greatest equipment, everything's top dollar, and it's their first time doing this. So you could go down that road. I would say don't. Start out small, take baby steps, make sure this is really going somewhere, whatever that looks like. Enjoy the journey as well. I think we all know here that there's days at the track that are just fantastic. You get the win or you clinch pole or whatever that is, and it's just the best day ever. But those days are rare in the sport. There's a lot of days where it didn't go right at the track. You leave the track not feeling good and you feel dejected and you question, what the heck are we doing here? I would just say enjoy the process and enjoy the journey, because you said earlier, we met however many years ago up at AMP, and now we're at where we're at. And it seems like it's gone by in the blink of an eye.
That is so true.
Take time and enjoy the journey. And then the other thing I would say is remember that, motorsports, it's the long game. Yes, when you first get into it, at some point you start making these big strides, right? You go out one day and you knock off 3 seconds off of your personal best. And then the next time you go back to the track, you knock another 2 seconds off. But then you get to that point where you get to the track and, wait a minute, I didn't find any time today. Wait, I lost 2/10 today. Or, you're stuck in one spot for 2 months before you find another tenth to get any faster. It's a long game. I think it's real easy, especially in today's society and world, to lose focus on that with the younger generation where it's all, we want instant results. We want it right now and we want to see immediate improvement and all of those things.
If you want that, go drag racing.
You're right. Yeah, by and large, motorsports doesn't work that way, right? And so it's easy to get discouraged. You just got to keep your eye fixed way down the road and take little baby steps to get there.
And Junior, do you feel the same way? Like, what advice would you give to someone like our daughters, who our kids are almost the same age, right? Like 10 and 8, and they're watching IMSA with me. Well, you've seen them at AMP.
Mhm.
You've seen my kids at AMP, and we go up to Petite every year, and at least my eldest keeps asking. And because of the situation our family is in, like, I can't put them in karting right now, but she keeps asking.
Mhm.
And she's like, I want to do this, I want to do this. So what would you say, Junior, to like a young person who's 10, 11, maybe has done a few things? What advice would you give them as they're starting out?
Don't give up. It's going to be a long road either way. So just keep going at it. That's really the best thing you can do.
Remember why you got into this to begin with, right?
Good advice.
But we still do this some now where we'll have a day where we'll go to the track, especially up at AMP. We're just there to have fun. We may go there that whole day. We're not working on anything in particular. We're just making laps and having fun. I think as you get down this road, obviously things do get very serious, and they should, because of where you're trying to get to, and they have to be. But if you could take a moment to step back once in a while and just go to the track and remember why you fell in love with this and why it's fun, and just go do that. Not worry about, oh, today I'm showing up to the track to work on these 3 things or this one thing or whatever. Just go drive. Make time to do that once in a while, to kind of keep a perspective of, hey, we're here because we like this, because it's fun.
So yeah, I guess biggest question is, what is, Junior, your final goal or dream? How do you see 5 to 10 years out? I know you mentioned Wayne Taylor, but is that the end goal? What would be your dream scenario, to dream big for a second?
Probably prototypes or like IndyCar or something like that. Super Formula. I think those are really cool. Or if like GT3 or Super GT, those are also really, really cool. Just somewhere in cars, really anywhere.
Now, would you be a factory driver, or have you thought about that, like being a factory driver, or are you going to be more like a gold platinum driver?
Honestly, whatever is easiest for me to do, whatever can get me the farthest, that's kind of how I always think. It's like, if this can take me somewhere that's worth it, I'm gonna go.
Keep your options open.
And your eyes up and be situationally aware, right?
That's right.
Well, we've reached that part of the episode, gentlemen, where I like to extend the opportunity for our guests to give any shout outs, thank yous, promotions, or talk about anything else we haven't covered thus far.
For all the folks out there, obviously, that might be interested in the school program that we're doing, please check them out online. Coincidentally, along with that, the school is running a sim racing based contest that you can sign up for. I believe it's a $25 fee to sign up for it, like an online racing league using iRacing. A number of events scheduled throughout the year. The grand prize at the end of it is a fully funded Legends race for the winner of that competition. So for any aspiring young drivers out there that have a sim and you're looking to get yourself into a car, could be a great avenue for you to do that.
I'd like to thank the chassis manufacturer Sodi. I'd like to thank their US department, Sodi USA. I'd like to thank our local shop, DCT. They've helped us pretty much our entire karting careers. Leo, who's the owner of DCT, he's been a great coach, been a great friend too. And then Miguel, he's my mechanic. He's really good at what he does. I'd like to thank D2 Motors. They're our engine builder. They make really good motors, and we're going to be running with them a lot this year. So looking forward to that. My mom and dad, I'd like to thank them for my sponsors. Both of them are my sponsors.
Really quick, Christian Jr., where can we find you on social media? Are you on social media? I know you're using Discord, and hopefully you've taught your dad what Discord is, but can we find you on social media, whether on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or anything like that? Is there any way to follow you and you follow your journey?
Last Turn Racing on Instagram. Search up Last Turn Racing, and that should give you the account.
Okay.
I want to try and get a YouTube channel one of these days. I want to get a GoPro, that way I can post some onboards, because
Right.
that would be pretty nice. I think the Facebook account is also Last Turn Racing.
It is. Dad knows that much.
Well, anyway, fellas, from the twists and turns of racing to the challenges of balancing education and competition, Christian Jr. is proving that sometimes the road less traveled is the fastest one to success. If you are an aspiring driver and you want to learn more about SpeedU's program, be sure to visit www.skipstoneacademy.org for more details. And if you want to keep up with Christian Jr.'s journey, you've heard his social media, and definitely stay tuned for more behind the scenes action.
And with that, gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for coming on Break Fix and sharing the beginnings of your journey, of your story with us. So, Christian Jr., I can't applaud you enough for what you're doing. We're rooting for you. Keep pushing those limits, keep chasing those dreams. And remember, there's always another green flag ahead of you. So, we hope to see you back. You have an open invitation to touch base with us. Tell us more sections of your story. Keep us up to date on your progress. And again, the best of luck.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, guys. We really appreciate the opportunity and get to hang out with you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
If you like what you've heard and want to learn more about GTM, be sure to check us out on www.gtmotorsports.org. You can also find us on Instagram at Grand Touring Motorsports. Also, if you want to get involved or have suggestions for future shows, you can call or text us at 202-630-1770 or send us an email at crewchief@gtmotorsports.org. We'd love to hear from you.
We hope you enjoyed another awesome episode of Break Fix Podcast, brought to you by Grand Touring Motorsports. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or get involved, be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at Grand Touring Motorsports. And if you'd like to learn more about the content of this episode, be sure to check out the follow-on article at gtmotorsports.org. We remain a commercial-free and no annual fees organization through our sponsors, but also through the generous support of our fans, families, and friends through Patreon. For as little as $2.50 a month, you can get access to more behind-the-scenes action, additional pit stop minisodes, and other VIP goodies, as well as keeping our team of creators fed on their strict diet of Fig Newtons, gummy bears, and Monster. So consider signing up for Patreon today at www.patreon.com/GT Motorsports. And remember, without you, none of this would be possible.